Premier League showdown. How has Rodgers turned Liverpool into title contenders? Final four, we'll have our B Sports projections for the Champions League semis. And we look back at the greatest African performances at the World Cup.
It's the only show with data analytics from Bloomberg Sports to give you the inside track on football around the world. Hello, I'm Aisha Dergahi and this is Football Dynamics. Well, joining me in the studio is former Nigeria international Ifeanyi Koku, our B Sports contributor Ben Littleton, and alongside them is football journalist Dion Fanning. Welcome to the show. It's the biggest game of the season so far, and for Liverpool, the most emotional on the 25th anniversary of the Hillsborough tragedy when Man City go to Anfield this weekend. They're the Premier League's top scoring clubs. Is attacking football going to be on the agenda?
I think it is. A lot of times when teams meet like this, the games don't turn out to be as exciting as everyone anticipates. But I think with the attacking potential of both sides, with Aguero possibly back for Manchester City, it does promise to live up to expectations this time. And
in terms of the main differences between the sides, what are they?
Well, actually, I mean, you said earlier they're the top scoring sides in the league. The main difference is in the defence, the back line. City's defence is very good. They concede under a goal a game. But if you look at the B Sports numbers, you'll see that Liverpool concede 1.21 goals per game. They're leaky at the back. In fact, Crystal Palace have conceded fewer goals. They have a better defence than Liverpool, who've conceded the same number of goals as Hull City. And if you think about some of Liverpool's big wins against Cardiff, against Swansea, against Stoke, they conceded 3 goals in each of those games, but still won the matches. They don't mind conceding because they're scoring more goals than their opponents.
Dion, how big is this fixture? Is it one that's going to help towards deciding the title?
Well, it's not going to be a title decider exactly, but I think whichever team wins, if there is a winner, they will be strong favourites to win the title. And I think if Liverpool have come from nowhere, nobody expected them to be here, with the force of the crowd behind them, they will be hopeful of getting a win, and that would put them into a very strong position.
And Evan, are you surprised that Liverpool are in with a chance?
I am, a little bit, considering where they finished last season. I didn't expect such a massive turnaround, so all credit to Brendan Rodgers and to the players. He's been able to cajole those players, caress them, whichever way you want to describe it, into performing much better than they did last campaign. So for them to go from where they were, as I said, to being possible champions, and you would say now guaranteed top 3, is a great turnaround. And it's not definitive, whatever happens this weekend, but certainly a winning side would be favoured over the other. Don't rule Chelsea out of the equation, of course.
Well, Liverpool are on a run of 9 Premier League wins, and at home they have won all but 2 matches this season. It's a pretty good time to be a Red. Now, Liverpool have gone from 7th last season to serious title contenders this time around. How much of their success is down to Brendan Rodgers, though? Dion and Ben are at the touchscreen to talk tactics.
Thanks, Aisha. So no coach, Dion, has changed formations more times than Brendan Rodgers at Liverpool this season. Let's look at how they started the campaign. In that opening day, only one striker, Sturridge, because, of course, Luis Suarez was suspended.
Yeah, well, at that stage of the season, Liverpool, Ben, were winning games, but they weren't playing particularly well. And I think Rodgers was still searching for his best team and his best formation. And as you say, without Suarez, he could only play one up front. He had Aspas in behind, who hasn't been much of a success this season. So I think this was a time when he was a bit uncertain about his formation. It wasn't so much that he was being daring and bold with different tactical approaches. He wasn't sure of his best team.
But he did try different things. He even went to 3 men at the back. We can see here. What was he trying to do with this one?
Well, this again, he had Sturridge available and Suarez at this time, but he wanted to keep his 3 men in midfield, which has always been a big thing with Rodgers. So he played 3 at the back, but it wasn't, again, he had 3 big centre-backs at the back, and when they played at Arsenal with this formation, they got torn apart. And I think at that stage he decided that he needed to do something else, because if you have those cumbersome defenders at the back, you can get ripped apart by it, especially a team as nimble and as agile as Arsenal. But again, this was an attempt also to get Suarez and Sturridge close together up front.
So the next game after that Arsenal game, he switched to the 4-3-3, and you could see that was when he was able to flick Sturridge, Suarez and Coutinho together but most of these players were actually at the club when Rodgers arrived.
Well, that's the thing. I think that is Rodgers' greatest strength is his man management. This is now, this is the team that played Tottenham, and at that stage, from January onwards, he had Sterling, Sturridge, Suarez, and Coutinho in the side, and they had, for different reasons, had been out. And so he put in all his attacking players. He was able to just go for teams, and then you see that what he has done with 8 players who were there before him. His man management, his ability to get players to play not just to their strengths, but above their strengths in some ways, has got Liverpool to the position they're in now.
And this is why Liverpool are challenging for the title. It's probably the 11 we'll see on Sunday.
Efan, Liverpool have scored more goals than anyone else. What have you made of the SAS, the Sturridge-Suarez partnership?
Yeah, it's been wonderful so far, with only a few games to go between now and the end of the season. I didn't really see it as a true classic partnership, if you like, because I thought they were quite similar. It's not big man, small man. Both guys similar physical build. So they've developed, and I see them more and more working together as a team. Both have still got that selfish streak when required, but when you scored 49 goals between you in the league, top scorers in European football so far of all the big leagues, and then you have to say that something is working very, very well at Anfield.
And as a Liverpool fan, you must be enjoying the banter and the success.
Yeah, of course, but remember that success is only relative to where you are so far. Liverpool haven't won anything, out of all cup competitions. So the only real prize that they can go for is the league title. Of course, Champions League will be great for them, not been in that competition for quite a few years. But that club has been built on being successful by winning trophies. So winning the league will be a massive fillip for everybody around the football club. And if those two guys stay fit and are performing well between now and the end of the season, no reason why they shouldn't. And then, of course, they will have a great chance of winning the title. Liverpool are closing in on Chelsea's Premier League record of 103 goals. In one campaign. So if they can do that, then of course you would have to say that they'll probably win the title.
Right, and I want to bring in a tweet that we've had in from a Liverpool fan, Nilesh, and he says that Brendan Rodgers has made the team fearless, adaptable, and has got everyone loving the game. Dion, do you agree with that?
Well, I think they are fearless. I think they've taken on teams and they play to their strengths, which, as Efan says, are their attacking players, and that is the thing that has made people warm to them, and it has made the neutral look forward to watching Liverpool's games, and they take teams apart when they click like nobody else in the league.
And how important has Sterling been a part of the attacking force?
Well, he gives them something that other teams fear, which is pace. He runs at defenders, and no one likes to see him with pace. You look at how Arsenal have dropped off since Walcott has been injured, because he was their outlet for pace, and it's such a rare commodity in the league. He's become a really important player, and he's only 18 and could be an important player for England at the World Cup as well.
And can Brendan Rodgers take all the credit for Liverpool's success at the moment?
I think he has to take a lot, because most of these players were at the football club before he arrived, so he's been able to galvanise them, get them playing a sweeter brand of football, making them, as I said, relatively successful so far because they haven't won anything. So yes, you have to say that he's been the man who's really turned things around. Of course, 1 or 2 additions have done reasonably well, and I think Liverpool are a more watchable team, or more watchable than most of the sides, because they're actually vulnerable at the back. So without that, and then there's no real. Go back to Chelsea first, Jose Mourinho teams. They weren't particularly liked because once they scored 1 or 2 goals, that was it. They shut the shop, and nobody was able to get too many goals past them. So that shakiness in Liverpool's defence makes them even more attractive to neutrals, because that they're going to score, and there's a likelihood that they will ship goals in defensively.
And Dion, Brendan is quite a young manager. Is he quite mature for the way in which he's commanding Liverpool at the moment?
Well, I think he's shown an ability to learn and to rectify his own mistakes. He came in the first year and he made a lot of big promises about how Liverpool were going to play, probably talked a lot, probably maybe too much. This year he's talked a lot less, and he's got the team out and played, and he's kept quiet. The way he's handled the team in the title run-in, I think, has been exceptional, especially for a young manager. He hasn't put too much pressure on them. He seemed relaxed at the same time. So I think he has evolved and changed in a very promising way.
And do you think that he's won over neutrals as well to support Liverpool?
I think he has. I think the way they've played, I think he's a central factor, obviously, in what's happened. I think the way Suarez has played this season, the great imponderable really is what would Liverpool have been like if Suarez had left the club in the summer. The hanging on to him, and they fought very hard, not just Rodgers, but above Rodgers, FSG fought very hard to keep him, and that was the great triumph of last summer. And when you look at the players they have and the way the players who came in last summer haven't done much for the club. Keeping Suarez was the big thing, and he has been central, obviously, to everything Liverpool have done.
Jan, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your insight to Liverpool's style and strategy. Well, what do you think of Liverpool's form this season? Is it down to just Brendan Rodgers? Tweet me your thoughts at Aisha Dergahi, and also the usual handle for the show at Footy Dynamics. But when we come back, we take a look at the African continent's best World Cup performances and, of course, the Champions League semi-finals. Welcome back to Football Dynamics, where every week we ask Efan to select his African dream team currently playing in Europe. Ben's with Efan now to find out who's made it into his lineup this week.
Thank you, Aisha. Efan, favourite part of the show? Let's see who's in your team of the week.
Absolutely, quite a few new faces as well. Avono makes a debut in goal. And Jeng, Majani, Joel Matip, who has been in team of the week, of course, before. And a long time no see for one of my favourite Ivorian players over the last 10 years, defenders anyway, Arthur Boca, I should say, at Stuttgart. I wouldn't call it a particularly solid midfield. We've got a couple of adventurous players, if you like, Adel Tarat at AC Milan, Mohamed Salah. Nice to see him getting a goal and starting to show what he's capable of. And Stefan Mbia, who's always been a pretty solid performer in the middle there. And a couple of new faces as well, Syriac for Anderlecht, Andre Ayew for Marseille, and Emmanuel Adebayo, who's been, probably Tottenham's best player since the turn of the year.
Are you surprised Tarak is doing so well at Milan? They're talking about extending his loan, making it a permanent deal.
In some ways, no. And I think the pace of Italian football will suit him. He's never going to be, or he's not going to be a regular, I would imagine, throughout the rest of the season and probably going forward if he indeed stays there. So I think he'll do well for a few games. I'm not sure longevity-wise whether he's the right type of player for AC Milan. Emmanuel Adebayo, as I said, in fantastic form. And scoring goals, as I said, big play for Tottenham Hotspur. But Andre Ayew, for me, has been the star performer of the week.
So let's have a look at Ayew's stats as star of the week.
Yeah, hat-trick against Ajaccio. He's not noted really as a goal scorer, only 5 goals this season. So for him to get a hat-trick in whichever fixture is a pretty good achievement. And one of the guys we hope to see at the World Cup in Brazil.
We hope so, but he's had a difficult relationship with the coach. He's now back in the squad after a year's absence. Do you think he'll get any games in Brazil?
I would certainly hope so. He's certainly one of the more talented Ghanaian footballers. This is a legacy of conflict that his father had, Abedi Pele, when he was a player, and has been quite influential with certain people within the Ghanaian Federation. So some of that sort of animosity, if you like, and friction has hindered his son to a certain extent.
Well, let's hope we see him continue scoring the goals in Brazil. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Well, Ghana made history at the last World Cup, almost becoming the first African nation to reach the semis. Now, in our regular Road to Rio feature, we look back at some of the best African performances over past World Cups.
African nations have appeared in World Cups since 1934. But it's only really since the 70s where they have risen to prominence. North African countries initially made an impact in 1978, when Tunisia beat Mexico 3-1 in Argentina. Morocco beat Portugal by the same scoreline in Mexico 86. Sandwiched between those wins is Algeria's famous defeat of eventual 1982 finalists, West Germany. 1990 was the year the footballing world learnt about Cameroon's prowess. Defeating world champions Argentina en route to a quarter-final berth was the stuff of dreams. Nigeria had their moments in the 90s, beating Bulgaria 3-0 in the USA in 1994 and Spain in 1998. Senegal were the sensation in 2002, beating World Cup holders France. And it's Ghana who have shone in the last 2 tournaments. With the African continent more competitive, winning World Cup matches is less of a shock than ever before.
Efan, you were part of the first Nigerian squad to go to the World Cup in 1994, where you beat Bulgaria 3-0 in your opening match.
Yes, we did. Great victory. Lots of expectation with the best group of Nigerian players during that era. So it was a fantastic time to be involved with the national side. So really proud I went to the World Cup, and it was the start of what was a pretty good crusade, if you like.
And any other matches that stood out for you?
I think the Cameroon match that was mentioned in the package from 1990 was amazing for the shock value. In the opening game against the holders, Argentina, Cameroon were reduced to 9 men. They had 2 players sent off. And there were so many stories around it. Roger Miller, who came on as a sub, had been in the international wilderness for 3 years. The goalkeeper, Thomas Nkono, who didn't want to play before the game. He had to be persuaded by the Cameroonian president to play. And we didn't know any of the players. There were 11 of that squad were playing in Cameroon. And that gives you all the surprise factor. And because in today's game we know all the players and we know who's who, you don't have that surprise factor anymore. So for me, the Cameroon 99 was one of the biggest shocks in World Cup history.
And that's the opportunity for you to really make your mark. First time when you go, and as Ben said, when you've got so many home-based players, if you like, because no matter the scouting network, they weren't as good, it has to be said, back in the 80s or indeed the 90s. So players are new, and it's the opportunity, to shock people. Less of a shock in a way when Senegal beat France in 2002. Yet again, France were defending champions. So that 1-0 victory was, sent shockwaves throughout the tournament, and Senegal went on to reach the quarterfinals.
Another big upset was Algeria beating West Germany.
Yes, it was 1982. Lodgar Baloumi was the goal scorer, and that was probably the first super shock, if you like, from one of the African sides. And Algeria were a little bit unfortunate not to get out of the group themselves. Lots of irregularities, allegedly, in that World Cup. So, we saw Ghana as well. Last time in South Africa, almost reaching the semi-final. So there's no doubt that this year as well in Brazil, 2014, we'll see one or two African nations again, well prepared, with the ability to shock some of the bigger nations.
Have you got an eye on one particular African nation?
Well, I mean, I agree with Efan, but if Ghana win a big game, if Ghana beat Portugal, that for me is not a shock.
It's less of a shock, yeah.
It's less of a shock. And Ivory Coast, if they qualify from their group for the first time in their history, that's not a shock either with the players they've got. I think the only shock could be if Algeria again do something, because no one is expecting anything from them. The B Sports projections say they'll finish bottom of the group. I don't think they'll finish bottom. They should be able to beat South Korea. And if they get a result against Russia or Belgium, they might even qualify. That, to me, would be a fantastic result and an amazing shock as well.
What works against them is that they're not a particularly expansive side. The side, all those nations we've spoken about doing great things at the World Cup, always had that sense of adventure. And the World Cup is about adventure, especially when you are one of the minnows, if you like. Most of the African nations, in comparison to the big European, South American sides, it has to be said they are. So that sense of dare, if you like, will see you through one or two shock victories, and of course, possibly getting to the round of 16 or quarters.
Well, I wonder which of the 5 African nations will be making the headlines this time around. Well, coming up after the break, we look at the Champions League and Europa League draws, and we put your questions to Efan. Welcome back to Football Dynamics, where we now move on to the Champions League. The draw was made on Friday morning, and as you can see, it's Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, Atletico versus Chelsea. And out of those 2 matches, which ones will you be tuning in for?
I'll be glued to both. I think I talked about Atletico and match up with Barcelona last week, saying it's a draw that Barcelona didn't want. I think I've been proved right there. So they outmuscled Barcelona, especially in the second leg. And I think it's we've got 2 teams who are similar style-wise. Chelsea and Atletico both determined, aggressive in a nice way sides. So I think Bayern Munich and Real Madrid actually would have preferred to not face each other, face one of the other 2, thinking that they could have outskilled them, if you like. But I'll disagree with Ben. I think Chelsea would have been pretty confident on the Mourinho that they could go all the way. It's proved, that they've got top-class players. But that'll be a test of minds and skill and everything, physique, in that semi-final. And the other one, as Ben said, it's a mouth-watering clash. 2 real giants of European football. And I think Real Madrid will find a way eventually, to get through. But, of course, defending champions, very hard to defend your trophy. Bayern won't give up without a real fight.
What we saw this week as well in the second leg ties is that both Bayern and Real Madrid have weaknesses. Man U really got to Bayern in that first half, and they took the lead as well. And Real Madrid lost 2-0. That there are weaknesses in both teams. They're not the superpowers that we perhaps feared a month ago.
No, but I think importantly, when Bayern Munich were required to step up, they were not only able to step up 1 gear, 2, even 3 gears, and blew Manchester United away. We know United are not in the top 10 of European teams this season. They won't be able to do that so easily against Real Madrid, but they do have those extra gears, as do Real Madrid. Chelsea and Atletico don't quite have that, but in ability to stifle the opposition, yes, they do. So we're in for a classic final in a way, puncher against counter-puncher.
And Ben, what do you make of the Europa League semi-final draws?
Well, I think Juventus are the favourites, but I don't think they would have wanted to face Benfica in the semi-final. Benfica were the finalists last season, they lost to Chelsea. But Juventus are hosting the final this time around in Turin, so they're taking it very seriously. In fact, no Italian side really takes the Europa League seriously until now. They've dropped in the UEFA coefficients, which affects their Champions League numbers as well. So it's important for Juventus that they win this competition, especially on home ground. For the all-Spanish other semi-final, the story is the Sevilla coach, Unai Emery, who spent 4 years as Valencia coach, and 3 of those 4 years, Valencia finished 3rd. It's a really nice story. He'll try and do one over on his former side. I fancy Sevilla again in that one. They're flying high.
I do. Valencia's league form has been patchy. You know, there's no chance of them qualifying for the Champions League. Of course, it would be nice to have actually kept the two Spanish sides, separated and to have seen Juve against one of them. But I agree with Ben. I think Juventus are the big favourites. But Benfica, one of those underrated, if you like, sort of giants of European football as well. You know, they've been champions of Europe. So we've got a couple of enticing ties.
Great, well, nice one, guys. Well, let us know how you think these semi-finals will pan out. It should be interesting, and a big thank you to those of you who've been tweeting in your questions for us to ask FN this week.
Why is it supposedly harder to play against 10 men?
I'm not sure that's always the case. That can be dependent on how good you are individually, collectively as a team, how organised you are. The quality of opposition, of course, is very important. Those 10 men sometimes can be galvanised into performing superhuman feats, and that's why they say it.
FN, as a Spurs fan, do you think we'll ever finish above Arsenal in the Premier League?
Of course they will at some point. They found it impossible to do under Arsene Wenger, who've been superb. But at some point, of course, Tottenham have to find the right balance in order to finish ahead of the Gunners.
What's the best stadium you've ever played in?
A few favourites for me, Anfield, St James's Park, Old Trafford, but the best for me was the San Siro in Milan.
Hi FN, which current Premier League player do you admire the most and why?
Simply Wayne Rooney. Selflessness, ability to do magical things individually, but the ability to play in different roles and to sacrifice himself for the team, as he has done so many times for Manchester United and for Everton, stands out for me.
Was it a mistake for Norwich to sack Chris Hughton at such a crucial stage of the season?
I do, I think it was. Smacks of panic to me. They're gambling that they won't get anything from their last 4 games. Very tough fixtures. All depends on what happens this week against Fulham. Big job for Neil Adams. Only time will tell whether it was the right choice.
Ben, do you agree that it's such a crucial time in the season to be getting rid of a manager?
Well, it is. It's bizarre, really, because I think so close to the end of the season, the stability is crucial. Having sacked Chris Hughton, I'm surprised Norwich didn't turn to one of their former legends sitting next to me.
Well, Neil Adams is former player, of course.
True.
Yeah, but really, what they've done, Norwich City have gambled on getting a point or 3 points this weekend at Fulham, Craven Cottage. If they do, and then there's almost no way that Fulham will be able to catch them. And you know, it's negative thinking. You're assuming that the team won't be able to raise themselves and get 1 point, at least 1 point, or maybe even 3 from their last 4 fixtures: Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea, and Arsenal. Daunting, I know, but possible. That who knows? They could get a win, could get 4 points. So shame for Chris, but nice to see a former player's been given the opportunity.
But do you think they'll do it?
I think they will, because I don't think Fulham will get the points required, to bridge that gap. It's 5 points right now. It's crazy thinking, really. You're asking a guy with no first-team experience to replace a guy who has quite a bit, Chris Hughton, to work wonders in 5 games. Where's the thinking in that?
And Ben, he's not the only manager that's been in the news.
Well, that's right. Tim Sherwood's reported that he's going to be standing down from his post as Spurs coach in the summer. And it's a strange one, because I have some sympathy for him. His record as Spurs coach in the Premier League is actually the best winning percentage in the history of Spurs coaches in the Premier League. So for the last 20-odd years, he's won more games than any other coach in history. Second in that list is actually Andre Villas-Boas, who was his predecessor.
Yeah, recently sacked, yeah.
Which says it all, really, about Spurs and their thinking. It's very short-termist. Sherwood will be offered the job as technical coordinator of the club, which is what he was promoted from earlier in the season. And it's up to him, really, whether he takes it. I think he thinks he can have a bigger job at a bigger club in the future. But for me, I think he's probably overreached himself with this job so soon in his career. Maybe a step back is the right thing for him.
So there'll be a couple of managers looking for a job. Well, you can find more information and post-match analysis on our B Sports website, where you can watch the show, as well as BloombergTVAfrica.com. And that's it for this week on Football Dynamics from me, Aisha Dergahi, FN and Ben. Thanks for watching.